the viewers to watch?
I'll send it to you. What's going on, YouTube? Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, this is our Q&A, and we just try to answer as many questions as we possibly can. The caveat here, though, this time is we got Todd with us, which is absolutely stellar. So Todd is going to help us get through these questions. As always, you guys usually come through and answer or ask a ton. And as Todd, just for you to be aware, there's a ton of questions that people dropped below on the videos previously. So basically, my intention is to just get through as many as I can objectively. And then, you know, if there's any sort of like weird ones, we'll touch on them at the end. But really, it's all about sort of getting the factual bits on point and then going from there. Is that cool with you?
Sounds good.
All right, cool. So more people will probably catch in here pretty soon. It's just, like I said, been a while. So let's get to the questions from last week. There's quite a few. And I personally like talking about this kind of shit because I think, you know, the podcast we historically have done is fun, but it's also, you know, we don't really get to talk in depth about anything. And my favorite part about this is talking in depth. So, the first question is from a guy named Dinos on the last video. When I reach 450 milligrams on the first test cycle, should I split the dose into 3 injections? And I'm assuming he means per week.
You should do 7 injections, 1 every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you want stable serum concentrations and to limit peak androgen. Like the way I think about it, at least, is like you have this line where kind of good stuff happens and not bad stuff happens. But once you cross that line, bad stuff starts to happen. And what can really cross that line is if you just inject everything all at once, you have this huge surge of androgens and then bad stuff starts to happen. And then you have this huge trough of androgens. And if you can kind of keep that stabilized as humanly possible, then a lot of the side effects that people complain about when we're referring to like acne or just really generally anything, estrogenic side effects, that is usually caused from unstable serum concentrations.
Yep.
Yeah. It's a easy fix.
Yeah. The rapid changes result in more breakdown of the test into estrogen and DHT, and the side effects come from the estrogen and DHT. The other thing I would say is that 450, I mean, like, I'm going to guess if you're asking if 1 or 3 shots a week which is optimal, that you're new to this.
Mm-hmm.
It's extremely unlikely that you need 450 milligrams of testosterone. If you're trying to hit a certain anabolic threshold, you know, people have this idea that, well, your first cycle, you should do 500 testosterone. That's false. That the first cycle might be 500 total milligrams, but if you do all testosterone, your estrogen is going to be sky high. And then you have to fuck around with an AI. You're probably better off doing something more mild, like 40 milligrams of test a day and 30 milligrams of Masteron a day if you want something neutral, or if Primo is an AI in your body, which you wouldn't know without experimentation, personal experimentation. There's no research papers can tell you what works in your body. Then maybe 40 of test and 30 of Primo. The reason why I always start people on Masteron first is it's less likely to be AI and it's cheaper. So it's 1/3 the price. It's easier to source. It's not faked. It doesn't burn. So that's why I always say Masteron is the first go-to anabolic. So I would say rather than doing 450 of test in 1 shot, I would do 40 milligrams of test and 30 milligrams of Masteron every day.
Yeah, I think that's a great thought. And like you said, Primo and Masteron, the equation is like really simple. I mean, if you're going to use an AI or need one, you might as well use more androgens and get more, you know, preferred anabolic response from what you're doing.
Right.
Next question is
wrong with AIs. I mean, AIs are great, but like, if you were to use 70 test and an AI, you're going to get almost double the DHT as if you used 40 test and 30 Masteron. And so the DHT is more likely to cause hair loss. in those who are genetically predisposed. So I don't see a disadvantage to doing the test and Masteron versus just straight test plus an AI. It's not that there's something wrong with an AI. It's just not optimal.
Right. So we got another question from the same individual. Is it common to get high triglycerides to, sorry, I don't know if English is his first language. Is it common to get high triglycerides on growth hormone is basically what he's asking.
No, but I can understand the mechanism. So the growth hormone is going to prefer fat as a fuel source over carbohydrates. And so therefore, you're going to liberate triglycerides from adipose tissue into the bloodstream. And if your energy expenditure doesn't meet this, then the triglycerides would theoretically go up.
Yeah. Yeah. And insulin resistance at large will usually track with cause higher triglycerides. So, I mean, if you're generally unhealthy, yes. But if you're a bodybuilder and doing bodybuilder things, it shouldn't be an issue at all.
I just got my blood work done and I'm on 20 units of GH and I've got a 77 triglycerides.
Yeah, there you go. That's crazy. Yeah. Like I will say I've never had ridiculously high triglycerides, but the worst it's ever been is just when I'm maybe a little bit excess. Like you shouldn't be, maybe unpopular, but you shouldn't be above 12, 13% body fat as a bodybuilder ever. And whenever I've reached that point is when triglycerides or really any relevant cardiovascular marker gets wildly, delusional. It just goes way out of fucking shit. I think most people just get too fat. Like at
right
the end
now,
of the day.
I just, my blood pressure, I think was 113/59, and I'm running 3,500 milligrams of gear right now. So,
yeah. Is this the highest you've ever ran, or is this?
Oh yeah. It's
really?
since December. Yeah, since December. And what's ironic is my GGT, my liver marker, was fine for the first 3 months, and then I started prep, and I didn't get my blood tested all prep, and now I got my blood tested 3 months into prep, and my GGT is a 56, which
Really?
at this lab is still normal, but to me, that's 3 times the highest it's ever been, really.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
That when I went from 2.2 grams up to 3.2 grams, it went from 17 to 27. And then now it's at 56, even though my total gear load is the exact same. And I think it's because my body's so stressed from being low carb and doing the same or more workload that there's more oxidative stress.
Yeah, and maybe just like the proteolysis is kind of, I think my belief is that shit's going to happen regardless of how many anabolics you have in the environment. So maybe you're just just more, protein expenditure, oxidation really causing that to
also,
go up.
I added in T3. So the only things that are added was I was on 140 clen, actually 100 clen, 25 T3, and 50 Anavar a day. So either it's from the Anavar, but I've done Anavar in the past that didn't have an impact. And I've never done T3 and got my blood work done. And T3 will eat up muscle. Even though I'm only using 25 milligrams, my T3 an hour after I took it was 11. It was 3. Eventually, I was carb cycling. It got down from 4.4 in the off season down to 3.0. And then I was like, okay, time to institute T3. I was going to do 12 and a half, but I decided to pull the trigger on 25 and just replace it. Now that an hour after I took it, it was 11. And then the next time I got blood work done, I didn't take it. So it was 24 hours since the previous dose. It was 3.5. So since that, I've backed down my T3 to a 12.5 from 25. I'm going to drop the Anavar and just put it back, put more Masteron in place. Actually, I was going to replace it with testosterone because my strength's down. So perhaps the decrease in DHT is the issue because I dropped my test from 120 to 40 a day. And the irony was I read some reading and it seems that the GGT goes up because it's converting glutathione over. So the glutathione is being used up. and that to
Yeah.
regenerate the glutathione, you need GGT. So I ordered some glutathione. So I'm going to do some glutathione injections to try to reverse this. The thing is, too, the GGT is a 14-day to 40-day half-life.
Mm.
So your GGT is going to be elevated way past the point where your liver stopped being an issue. But the fact that if I was damaging my liver on my gear load in the off season in December, it would have been on my blood work in March, and it wasn't. So it shows me that since it actually went down from 27 in December to 23 in March, it tells me that the total gear load is not the problem. It's either the compounds or those compounds in combination, or the compounds in combination in the calorie deficit.
Yeah. I would assume it's the calorie deficit. Like you said, you're probably depleting a lot more glutathione due to oxidative stress.
I mean,
when I was on prep last time, I would do a shot of glutathione at 600 milligrams at the just before bed on the rest day, and then I would wake up the following morning and I would have lost 6 or 7 pounds in one day. And the correlation for me was like there was just so much inflammation that I dropped overnight. I don't know if that was actuality or it was something else, but it was only in isolation whenever I injected 600 milligrams of glutathione. And I found it to be really helpful for me as well, because then subsequently I would get a lot less of the like body heaviness that you feel in prep when you're just like everything fucking sucks. You get a lot less of that.
That's how I feel my strength. So the way I have a measurement of a 1 to 5 scale of strength, if I match my logbook, it's a 3. If I'm not matching my logbook, it's less than 3. If I'm exceeding my logbook, it's 4. So I was traditionally 4, and then I started getting some 2s in there. So I decided a diet break for 3 days. Had 3 high days in a row. Then I started getting 4s again. Then recently I had all 2s, and I sent my check-in pics to Karina, and she's like, your legs look so smooth. They're so fatigued. Take half a week off cardio and start doing a couple back-to-back high days. And I'm just so exhausted, even though I'm doing the high days. I'm no longer diet fatigued. Like the hunger went away. But now that the hunger went away, I'm not sore, but my body just feels like I'm like 1,000,000 pounds. So I really think it's more total body fatigue is what drove up the GGT than it is the baby dose of Anavar or the hormone replacement level of T3. And I know it's not the total gear load.
Yeah. Well, there's literally one estranged piece of data which says that it's just a profiling of a drug. It's a very old profiling of Anavar, and it says that essentially Anavar is uniquely metabolized by the kidneys and not the liver. And for me, that's just kind of perplexing because, just mechanically speaking, you'd think it would be going through the liver. Is that a valid statement, or
why would it be 17? I know that Kurt has repeated that, but why is it 17 methylated then?
That's what my thoughts are, because just literally speaking in terms of like what it has to do to get metabolized, why would this seemingly similar androgen to any other oral androgen that we take get metabolized uniquely by the kidney? The only thing it has going for it is I don't see it causing as much hepatic stress as other orals do, but even then it's still causing it.
But it still drives down HDL.
Yeah, that too.
Which means that it is hepatic stress.
It is causing some downregulation in HDL receptors. Or upregulation.
So what I mean, I see your like the point would be like, no, you don't need to take out the Anavar from the cycle because it should be fine. Well, it also is contributing to the T4 T3 conversion because it decreases TBG. So by taking out the Anavar, I fix 2 birds with 1 stone. I'm going to most likely put less strain on the liver, and I'm also going to have less T4 to T3 conversion. Because like my T4 went from a 1.3 to a 0.4, and my T3 went from a 3.0 to a 3.5. And I think that's because, and my TSH went from a 0.8 to a 0.01. So I think that the T3 murdered the T4 indirectly through TSH. And so I had to increase my T. So I'm basically going from 50 T4 and 25 T3 to 75 T4 and 12.5 T3 as an attempt to try to correct it. And I'll get those redrawn next week. The rest of them, it's a shit show. I basically have to get the fatigue off. I want to make my blood work look better while still losing fat. And that's not an easy thing to do because I'm 4 weeks out.
Yeah. So this is a sidetrack question completely from the ones we have listed and the ones that we got in the comments so far. But a lot of people shit talking in comments. I've noticed a ton of between all of us, right? Like we get in YouTube videos and Instagram posts and like just everything. There's always going to be some people that are just so delusional about what we are or what we're capable of or any of these things.
Right.
What are your thoughts on a coach needing to look big to coach people to get big? And this is like a personal one towards me because I'm like 260 plus pounds. I just don't think it translates on videos because I'm 6'2" and my muscle bellies don't look like a black guy's. But realistically, like a lot of people will say that, well, if a coach doesn't look big, I don't think I can get him big. Or I don't think he can get.
It's a credibility thing for sure. I'm the same way. If somebody doesn't look like, you wouldn't hire a broke financial advisor,
right?
You're not gonna, but you could hire a bald barber. Yeah. So the thing is does the person have to look big or shredded right now? No, but there has to be some demonstrable proof that they were competent in the past. Either they themselves were successful bodybuilders or they've been the coach of people who were successful bodybuilders. So if you aren't your own billboard, you need to you're like one of those coaches where their whole Instagram is just pictures of their athletes, which I find to be really tacky and annoying. Because you see, they're good with 5 girls. Well, how many people have hired them? And why is it only girls that they are good coach of? Why are no men coached by this person?
Yeah.
And it's like sense. Girls are much easier to coach because girls typically don't do what they're supposed to do. So if you can get a girl to actually follow directions, she's going to win.
Yeah.
Because the other girls don't. So it's like the fact is, if you work with 100 girls and you turn 10 of them pro, that's great. It means that because you're turning girls pro, already hot girls are coming to you. So you've got these hot girls and you're like, I just have to make these hot girls less hot, less fat, more hot. And if they listen to me 80%, it's good enough because the other girls don't listen at all. So you turn all these girls pro. But getting a guy who's a 200 plus pound muscular bodybuilder, shredded and full on stage, that's a completely different discipline. So in your case, because you're 6'2" and 260 pounds and you're a natural pro, but you don't state that anywhere that I've seen, and I'm not really privy to your marketing, but if your marketing was done with current enhanced pictures, but it says Kolton, and you don't want to use your last name, fine, Coachkolton, organization pro. You don't have to say you're natural pro, but if it's like IPA pro bodybuilder, the majority of people who you're marketing will A, say he looks amazing, B, I wish I could look like that, C, he's a pro bodybuilder. People who are competitors might say, oh, he's not in the NPC, he's not a real bodybuilder, and they may not hire you, but is that your demographic anyway? Is competition prep, or is it mostly lifestyle and biohackers?
Right, which I would argue the majority of my clients are that.
Right, and so since you're marketing lifestyle and biohackers, you just have to look good. You have to look like the end point. If you look like Brandon Curry, no one's going to hire you unless they want to look like Brandon Curry. But the same reason why I never advertise girls that I work with in the past who were physique or figure, because every woman looks at that and like, oh my God, I don't want to look like that, because they think that every girl you coach is going to look like that. They're not smart enough to know that's what happens when some girl uses steroids. They think that's what happens when they work with you. Same thing with Valhalla Labs. When I couldn't explain to my business partner that we do not want roided girls marketing our products. He's like, yeah, but she's like 4th in the world. I'm like, no woman wants to look like that. No woman's going to trust that she can use our products and not look like that. They think that if we're marketing that she looks like that because of our products, then they're going to assume, since they don't want to look like that they shouldn't use the product. So I think that if people are picking on you because they say you don't have muscles, what are you talking about? Those are probably some incel bitch who's taking a bunch of gear and is suffering through a whole bunch of side effects. And you told him not to do something either after he did it and got burned, or you told him not to do something, then he wants to do it anyway. And they're pissed. And that's about it. Like, for instance, if I say growth hormone slows aging, people comment all the time, like, why would anyone take advice from this old man about growth hormone? It's like, I'm less old looking because of the growth hormone. I'm still old. Or it's like the same, like, that's the same thing as like, that'd be almost like saying, I don't want to use growth hormone because I don't want to be a white person. It's like, hormone didn't make me white.
That's hilarious. Okay, so let's get back to the real questions. I appreciate that, Todd. Okay, so we got another one from a guy named Iron Paradise. How has your experience been with, and I know you have practical application here as well, Avodarts or just dutasteride orally administered? Any side effects, dosing protocol, any advice?
So what I found was, if you look at the dose response curve, the best way to use Avodart or dutasteride is, I think it's 0.1 milligram, not 0.5, which is how they come, 0.1 milligram like every 10 days. No, it's 0.5 every 10 days. One pill every 10 days, the 1st, the 11th, the 21st of the month. That's it. If you do it, or to make it simpler, because there's 31 days in some months, go the 2nd, the 12th, and the 22nd of every month. If you do it like that, you'll get 50% suppression. And it's got a 5-week half-life. So if you overdose, you're going to have impotence for like 2 months, 3 months.
Yeah.
And I used it to threaten a girlfriend once. I was like, you better shut up or I'm going to take 3 of these. And then she's like, she's not going to, like, and a lot of people are like, well, she won't get you, but she'll get it from someone else. I was like, no, she shut up. She was like, all right, fine, I'll be quiet. So the point is you could take one 0.5 milligram tab every 10 days will 50% suppress. Now I did that and I front loaded. I took 2 of them on the first day to get the ball rolling so I could hit steady state concentration. I needed gyno surgery in 3 months. So by decreasing the DHT conversion, you're shunting the pathway to estrogen. You're also not binding the DHT to the breast tissue, which is an inhibitor on the estrogen receptor alpha binding of the estrogen. And then there's a couple other minor indirect mechanisms that also was a problem. But it's not a linear, it's almost an exponential amount of estrogen upregulation to crush your DHT.
Yeah. I will say that the oral dutasteride, I mean, my sex drive can become like an actual problem. Like it can be distracting as shit sometimes, and it's very annoying. So I experimented taking it daily. I had no side effects. Like my sex drive was maintained. I will say like it was slightly, like it was maybe 20% less, but nothing significant. And I'll say that like erection quality was maybe 80% versus 100% with Cialis. But beyond that, like it was relatively stable. Very interestingly, because I have heard that from a lot of other people with the gyno development and then just impotence just throughout usage. But for me, it's been relatively innocuous in terms of like my function down there.
So the irony is this: I was really looking at my blood work again because obviously I was concerned, and what I found was my DHT on 60 milligrams of test a day was 85. Normal range is 75. If once I hit 700, once I hit 100 a day, the DHT was random. It was anywhere from 94 to 177. That I could, even if they were serially done and no other changes were made, that although the estrogen I can pinpoint almost to the 100th place, not just the 10th place. I can like, I want a 101 estrogen. I know exactly how much test and Primo to use to get a 101 estrogen, and I can move the scale. Like I can be like, I'm going to use this much test. I need this much Primo to get a 101 estrogen. I'm that good with my estrogen. DHT, there's no rhyme or reason. And with an 1100, it was 150. So it seems that there's a variable amount of receptor saturation or a variable amount of enzyme saturation that occurs between 700 and 1,000. But once you're over 1,000, it seems to be leveled at 150. There's no, it doesn't matter how much you use. So in the future, maybe even though I advocate like never going over 40 milligrams or 50 milligrams of test a day, get your HRT amount of test to get your E2 where you want it to be. That keeps your DHT low. There's all these people who are bro scientists who say that test grows muscle better than anything else, and you can't grow. It's because you're not using test. I might try using 1,400, 200 tests a day and matching some Primo with that and seeing like if I can keep my estrogen at 101, but I can blast as much test as possible. See if my DHT doesn't go any higher than 154, then what difference does it make? I've saturated the enzyme. We can take it and see if it works any better. I have a feeling it doesn't. I think the reason why test grows more tissue is because of the estrogen conversion, and the estrogen has its own anabolic effects. Plus, the test is going to cause deactivation of 11 beta hydroxylase, which is going to shunt some of your glucocorticoid over to mineralocorticoids. You're going to store more water. So you're getting water retention and increased strength from the aldosterone, increased strength from the DHT, water retention, and increased muscle growth from the estrogen. And that's why testosterone grows better. But if you eliminate these variables, it doesn't grow any better than a neutral compound. But I guess my point is, I suspect that if you're overloading the situation and you're capped out at 150, if you threw dutasteride at that point, then 50% of 150 is 75, is the top end of normal. So at that point, it could be safe if you're running enough of it. And once you've maxed it out, then you can cut it in half and you should be fine. Now, everybody's maxed out value might be different. Do you remember what your testosterone level was at when you tried to do testosterone?
What I was putting in my body exogenously or what it was in serum?
Yeah. No, what exogenous?
We do the math here. 1,000 milligrams a week.
All right, so you're using 150 a day.
Yeah.
So you were probably at, if you were me, you're probably at 150 DHT. So cutting that in. So if you were to subtract, 50%, I think you get 90% suppression or 95 suppression with enough dutasteride. Then 1/20th of that would be a 30 DHT, which is the middle of the normal range. So 5% of 150 is, am I wrong about that? No, I'm wrong. 5% of 150 would be 7.5. Yeah, 7.5, which is really low. But I've had periods where I was using DECA only and I had no testosterone and I had a DHT of 1.8 and I had a completely normal penis function at that level.
Yeah.
In fact, let me look. I've got that blood work right here.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing. It seems highly variable in individuals, and I wonder if it's not just like
it was 1.7. I had a 1.7 DHT and my total DHT, and my range was 30 to 85. I had a totally normal sexual functioning at that point.
Do you have your SHBG?
Yeah, my SHBG was 2.4.
Wow.
My total estrogens was a 13. My estradiol was 6.6. My total testosterone was 111. And that wasn't the sensitive. So most of that 111 was
so that wasn't an LCMS, like ultra sensitive assay.
No, that's picking up the nandrolone. Yeah.
Wow.
I was running, I think, 700. I was running 700 Tren and 350 Anavar. That was all I ran going into the Texas Pro. Yeah.
Wow. Do you think that the effects of that impotence are like more of a nocebo effect, or even maybe neurological?
Yeah.
Even
for sure. So? Yeah. Like, okay, here's the best example. If you're fucking a girl and she complains about your dick not being hard, it's going to get softer. It's not going to get harder. And then every time you go to fuck her again, you're going to be worried that your dick's not hard and it's going to be soft. And then she's going to reinforce this by putting you down for it being soft.
Mm-hmm.
And if you try to use Cialis or Viagra to make it hard, she's going to make it about her. Look, I'm not pretty enough. You've got to use that. You know, it's like, no, you're just that much of a bitch. I have to take drugs to get hard to fuck you. You know, it's like, so that's the same type of thing. It's like, if some girl's going to put you down, your boner's going to go away. So if you're convinced your boner's going to go away, it's going to go away.
Yeah. No, that's a really good
I mean, another less negative version of this, because a lot of people are like, Todd hates women. Yeah. It's like, what if the girl's super hot? She's so fucking hot. And you're like, oh my God, I hope I don't fuck this up. It's over. You're so nervous at that point, you're not going to get hard. And you're like, I got to tell you, like, look, you're so hot, I'm not going to even get hard. And then they'll laugh. And then you're like, I'm just so nervous. You're going to have a bad time. I'm not going to even get hard. So I'm just going to go down on you for a while until you're asleep. And then I'll fuck you when you're asleep. And then you'll wake up and you'll be like, oh, this is awesome. And as long as you get consent, it's not rape. It's like, do you mind texting that you're okay with this to me so I can screenshot it and send it to my legal?
Right.
You know, yeah.
Oh my God. That's so funny. That's fucking deadly.
Like, you can't use the words "you're too hot for me," but you can say "you're so hot, my dick's shot."
Right.
You know?
Right. Okay, let me just pop through a couple of these. Okay. Nick, Kolton, are you staying in Thailand long term? I'm probably going to stay in Thailand long term. I just have to do a little bit of workaround. That is going to be undercover so the Thai government doesn't hear about it. In your opinion, which one would be the best, Primo or Mast? We talk about this so much.
It just depends on you. Now, on blood work, I've never seen Masteron be an AI. I've seen Primo be an AI almost every single time. Sometimes it's a strong AI, sometimes it's not. It's just that the people believe Mast is an AI and Primo isn't. They believe Mast is an anti-estrogen and that Primo is neutral. In my experience and on blood work, it's always the opposite, that Primo is Mast and Mast is Primo. That the rumors are misplaced. It's like there's identical twins, Sally and Tammy is this murderous monster, but Sally gets blamed for everything Tammy does. That's the situation with Primo and Masteron, is that there's like they're twins, except one's the evil twin and everyone thinks it's Masteron. It's actually Primo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say more often than not, I see in labs from people that Primo is a significant AI. Like it really does potently suppress estrogen, even to very low ends of normal or just completely low. And then they think, like, well, I have to use low tests and high DHT to grow. And then it's like they just have nothing. Like their estrogen's in the absolute trash. And then with Masteron, it's absolute. I have had many people develop gyno on Masteron prior to working with me. It's a very common thing you see because I think they think that 1-to-1 ratio is going to be fine. and then they'd start doing it, and then it's, you know, once you're taking a long ester like that, I mean, you're pretty much fucked unless you get AIs on deck. So
what I did the exact same thing as everybody was so adamant Masteron was dry and Primo was neutral. I was
yeah,
at 500 test, 900 Primo, had a 15 estradiol.
yeah,
Eventually
yeah.
found that the sweet spot for me was 700 test, 840 Primo, had a 40 estradiol. Worked my way up to 1050 test, 1050 Primo, had a 50 estradiol. And then I went on prep and switched it to 500 test, 1400 mast, assuming I crushed my estrogen. And then after 6 months tested it, it was 200 estradiol.
Picograms per milliliter?
Yeah, it was 200. Wow. So all I had to do was take 140 test and turn it into Primo. So my total load didn't change, didn't touch my Masteron. Just went from, I was actually at 840 test and 1400 Masteron at that point and had a 200 estradiol. I went from 840 test to 700 test and 140 Primo. And my estradiol went down from 200 to 100. Wow. That the 5-to-1 ratio of test to Primo to 5-to-1 equals 100 in me. About 1-to-1 equals about 50 in me. 1-to-2 equals 15 in me. So that's how I was able to say, I want to have a 30 estradiol this prep. So I switched my test from 120 and 20 Primo, which was 100. And I went to 40 test, 60 Primo. I was like, my goal is going to be 30. It was 28.7. And then it self-corrected to 32.2.
Wow. That's impressive.
So I can like pinpoint that shit. And I can do that with Primo. And I've done it with other patients and clients. I've never had anybody respond to Masteron like it's an AI. I know Steve says he does. I know that Ryan says that he has seen it on blood work. And I was like, did you really see it on blood work? And he wasn't so sure. And Paul, when he used Masteron, he said he looked drier and he lost water. But I don't know anybody who actually did the Pepsi challenge where they're on one of the medications and then they switched it to the other medication and did serial blood work to see what happened. But I've just done it on myself, and I've had tons of people come to me on Primo with crushed estrogens, and I'll switch them from Primo to 50-50 Primo Mast, and their estrogen comes up.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's kind of it's a weird situation. You know, it's interesting how we can have such a small, tight-knit community, and yet everyone has so much wildly different opinions on simple shit. It kind of blows me away. But
I think it's the reason why people think test is so good is because ultimately they feel small. So with test, they get water retention from aldosterone, and they get water retention from estrogen, and they get strength from DHT. So it makes them feel big and strong. So they have an emotional attachment to test.
Listen, I think I'm not the guy saying like test is best by all means. Like, I think it is great for a lot of people, but for me, I don't aromatize at all. So like, I am a huge fan of doing a gram of test, or the most I've done is 1,500 milligrams of testosterone. No AI, no DHT. My estradiol gets to like 65 picograms per milliliter.
Wow.
I enjoy it. It's it's an easy thing to just inject one compound and then just basically cruise.
And I agree with you, and you have results which reinforce. Well, let me rephrase that. You have data to reinforce the safety and efficacy of your value. Other people don't have that blood work. So they simply are like, I don't get gyno, I don't get hair loss. You're an idiot. You're wrong. Fuck you. Because they themselves have done something and it worked for them. They don't ever consider that it might be different for other people or that they're the outlier in both categories. Like you retain your hair and didn't get gyno. Whereas most men, if they use 400 tests, they're going to lose their hair and get gyno.
Mhm.
And that's why the safer use model is to use hormone replacement therapy dose of testosterone and use a synthetic anabolic to grow muscle, because that's why they made anabolic steroids. They made them so you can separate out the anabolic effect from the estrogenic and androgenic effects. So you can make it purely a muscle building compound. And when they fucked up and got stuff that did dumb shit that wasn't good, then they used it for something else.
Right. Yeah. I mean, look, I think testosterone is really powerful for people who are concerned. That, contrary to popular belief, I think it's popular. I think it's useful for people who are concerned about hair loss or who are concerned about being overly responsive to certain estrogens, because you know the end fates. Like, it's very clear what the end fates will be as far as conversion into DHT, conversion into estradiol, and that awareness, I think, is really easy for, like, for me, for example, for my hair. I just take dutasteride. I know it's going to happen. If I throw a 19 nor testosterone in it, it complicates things a little bit. So I think there's a lot to be said in that regard too. But I do agree that I think most people will stray away from experimenting and trying different compounds because of the thought that there's that, like, it still is echoed through in the infinity of time. It's the 500 milligram test cycle that everyone should be doing for their first cycle, and then that gets repeated and recycled and reformatted in different ways. And so testosterone is always sort of that base high dose kind of compound use.
Vast majority of people cannot get away with over 50 a day. 350
Yeah.
a week tends to be the upper limit on anybody being able to handle it without getting some side effects. Yes, it's so ubiquitous and it's so well studied that we have drugs just to control the side effects of testosterone. And you could totally run an all testosterone cycle and microdose dutasteride and microdose arimidex and microdose telmisartan to mitigate the three endpoints of the testosterone.
Mm.
The other way to do it is, once you've established Masteron doesn't work as an AI, you can simply use HRT test and just run as much Masteron as you want. And I mean, I've already ran 3 grams and no consequences at all from it. So, and people say, well, it doesn't grow any muscle. I was like, that just doesn't make any sense. It simply makes no sense at all. Because even if it was true that the 3-alpha HSD is going to decompose the Masteron once it hits the cytoplasm, which it does to a limited extent, like it does Primo, but not as much as Proviron. Even with Proviron, you can throw enough of the DHT at that enzyme to where you've overloaded it, and that and some of it gets through and binds to the genome. Like, there's only so much 3-alpha HSD before it gets saturated, and the rest gets through. So if if Masteron in low doses is 60 or 80% as anabolic as test, once you hit the grams of it, at that point, it's going to be the same thing as test.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, one of the ideas behind Proviron is that it's used to absorb the 3-alpha HSD to allow Primo and Masteron through. But at night, why would you spend money on an expensive drug to protect a cheap drug? We'll just take more of the cheap drug.
Yeah, I agree. Nick P asks, when assessing low T, what number is considered low? I've seen people say that 500 is low, under 500 is low, and others say that under 300 is low. I know assessing the symptoms is the most important, but just curious.
It depends on their goal. Like, if they're trying to build muscle, you need to have at least 700. If I think that your optimal is between 1,000 and 1,500, there's no advantage to being lower than 700. But if somebody's like 70 years old and they've got AFib and they've had a couple heart attacks and they have a 500, I'm not going to want to treat them with testosterone, because their levels are good enough for what they're trying to accomplish, which is stay alive and be healthy and functional.
Yeah. And I think free tests, sex hormone binding globulin, and estradiol all play a big role in that as well. So if someone's like, if you're a natural guy and you are contemplating needing to enhance testosterone, well, if you're subsequently your DHT is in range, your estradiol is in range, your sex hormone binding globulin is good, and let's just say you have a really high androgen receptor density, maybe that 500 is plenty for you, and you live life just fine, and you build a decent amount of muscle. But inevitably, you're never going to be like, I think what's really unfortunate too for natural people is that the spitting average of fitness influencers are the people you see most often online who say they are natural or not. Even if they look natural, they're probably not. And so, being real with yourself is important here too. But yeah, I think what is low is very subjective. I would say below 700, I'm, shooting for high numbers like you, 700, 800 is kind of like, maybe you want to get higher, see what's up.
I think if you're naturally at 800, don't fuck with it. If you're under an 800, you want to build muscle, you probably should do something about it. That doesn't mean you have to take testosterone. HCG might give you a bump to get you over that threshold. But I mean, in the end, all thresholds are arbitrary based off of norms and averages. Like this study that says that you have to have 700 to build muscle, what was their training program? What was their diet like? Was it even a good measurement of, or was it some 70-year-old man who's a trained athlete because he rides a bicycle and they've got him doing single leg extensions for 3 sets of 10 at 70% 1RM?
Yeah, exactly. No, it is. Anadrolic is not a Thai pharmaceutical. It's not an actual company of Thailand. I think it's pretty much just an underground lab. Brian Moreno, do you let your blood work dictate when you throw in T3, T4 into a cut? Yes. Yeah, 100%. I mean, you don't want to, if you're functionally producing enough thyroid hormone to respond to caloric deficits, I don't think there's a need to put it in. There's unique situations for maybe females where I would do something differently, but that's more extreme. And when you're talking about bikini athletes, the goal isn't really to be like highly muscular. It's just to be extremely, not even, I mean, just lean, and having like a petite body. And that might be a little bit different. But for most males, if you just throw in T3 arbitrarily, it's just like going to eradicate muscle tissue.
So I think that what a lot of guys do, and this is more of a European approach, is just start off the prep at a HRT dose and never escalate it. You're not using it as a fat burner. You're just assuming you're going to eventually have metabolic adaptation and metabolism slow. So they'll start off prep at like 50 to 100 T4 and 25 to 37 T3 and just leave it in. And then you don't have a moving metabolism. Your metabolism's fixed and it's not harmful. And then, like, for instance, John Jewett does this. He stays at 150 T4 and 37.5 T3 year round because apparently over time, and I apologize if I'm wrong, maybe I misunderstood him. Over time, his thyroid stopped bouncing back after preps. So he basically decided, I'm just going to stay on this and leave it in forever. And so he just leaves it in, and then he doesn't have to worry about carb cycling to keep his thyroid functional because his thyroid's not functional. He's replacing it. And this is an easier way. It's just like hormone replacement therapy for your thyroid, just like we do hormone replacement therapy for testosterone. Nobody cycles testosterone if they're HRT. They just leave it in.
Yeah. Lee J says, I'm the same with Test, 1 gram, no issues. Would that mean I have those same? I mean, probably. And for me personally, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If it works for you and you get, look, like, I think if you can measure, regardless of what an opinion is, even regardless of what, factual evidence might be in play, if you're making linear progression, you're feeling happy and healthy about life, the goal with your life is just to enjoy the passage of time as much as possible. So if you're making exceptional progress where you're getting a half a pound, or so a week of gains, you're relatively lean and maintaining that leanness, fuck it, stay there. Like, I don't see the need to overly complicate things if there's not a demand to do so.
Yeah. If you're growing, don't fuck with it. All of this thing about how to build muscle is for people like me who are hard gainers, and now I'm old and I'm advanced. So I have everything stacked against me. So really, probably in the 99% of the problem is just I don't eat enough. But I try all the most scientific training techniques. I try all the different steroid modification things, growth hormone. I put time and energy into drugs and training, and it's probably all nutrition that's the problem, because that's what I pay almost no attention to. I'm just like, I'm going to eat 300 grams of protein and I'm going to eat as much carbs as I can. And now I've just recently learned that what I did with Justin Harris in 2020 worked. I just didn't work it right. Is that high days with insulin and low days not with added fat. Just you're better off having no. I was putting my fat in on my low days, thinking you needed to have some fat in your diet, even though I didn't have any type of scientific reason for it.
Right.
But that's how I gained the fat in the off season. Wasn't from the high days with the insulin. It was from the low days having my ribs or buffalo wings and stuff on the low days, trying to keep the food volume low, but the calories still high. And I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have been having 100 grams of fat on my off days. I should have kept it to the 20 or 30 grams of fat every day.
Yeah, that would have been exceptional if you had done that, because that's like almost, it's near 1,000 calorie reduction just in fat.
Right. And that would have been fine. And that was where I fucked up. So in the past 3 years in the off season, I ate all clean and I didn't use insulin or sugar. And it did not go well. It didn't go well. If you're going to use sugar, you got to use insulin. But if you're not, and I'm this isn't an advocate for someone else to use insulin, but I tried to use sugar without insulin, and it just turned to fat instantly.
100%. Yeah.
So it's one of those things.
The biggest I've ever been, when I was like really dedicated to bodybuilding at that point in time, was when I was using, multiple forms of insulin, multiple forms of IGF-1/growth hormone, and a absolute metric shit ton of carbohydrates. And then on my low days, just like very little carbohydrates. I mean, that was truly the best I'd ever have looked in terms of fullness, size, and weight. It was a transformative experience. I think the carb cycling is kind of the approach you need to take in a bodybuilder's lifestyle, because we can't push the carbohydrates that we might need on a daily basis, because we'll just get fat and insulin resistant. But that little break intermittently can be sort of put off the gas that a person might need to stay consistent.
Yeah, what I used to do is push off, pull off, legs off, and then the training days were high days and the low days were not. But this time through, I'll probably go. What worked this most recent time is did push, pull, legs, and I would go push, pull, off, legs off, and then on the training days were high days, and the low days were no carbs, no insulin, no sugar. I would have the same base carbs. I just wouldn't add sugar and insulin to it.
I see. Sammy G. Kolton, what is stage ready body fat percentage for, say, a bikini competitor and a wellness competitor? In a female athlete, I mean, it's really not. I guess at the higher levels, it's an impressive level. I'd say it's probably like 13% body fat for a female, somewhere around there.
It's 14 is what I was thinking.
Yeah.
14 is at a high level. I would say 18 at a low level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you get too lean, the thing is they like very much so oppose that look, especially at a regional show. They oppose that look because it just screams like, oh, this person has an eating disorder. Or they got, and it's the reality is that's what the Olympians look like. So what the fuck I've had a lot of clients where we've had to like super fill them so they spill over just because they didn't want them to get marked down for being too lean, and it worked.
I did that with Karina. She was too shredded, so I brought her in ultra flat so that she would have less muscle and look softer. And she was still more shredded and bigger than everyone else on stage.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So they brought her down to second, and they said it was because they didn't think her presentation was good. And then the other girls weren't even remotely in shape too. That was the funny part. They're like 20% or more on the other girls, and she's like 12. But I brought her in flat so that she would at least look less hard.
I got a really funny question. It's not from an American or anyone that speaks English, but it's hilarious. It's, sir, can I eat 1 kilo of chicken breast? Will my blood pressure increase?
Yeah, you can have chicken breast, bro.
Your blood pressure will increase. Okay, so another one. For females, would you prefer test over VAR, both, or something else?
So what I do with girls, if I have to use, the first step is you do blood work. If they don't need it, they don't need it. But if they need it, it's a 0.5 milligram of testosterone a day. You see a lot of these clinics are giving out 10 milligrams twice a week. Yeah. That's fucking insane. It's 0.5 milligrams of test a day. And then Anavar, people are not going to like this. 1 milligram pre-lift is probably all they need to get anabolic effects. Then if you do 5 milligrams of Anavar a day, eventually you will start to look like a dude. You won't see it. You won't see it. But if you look at pictures of you 3-4 years ago, guys will think you were prettier before. You won't. You will think you look better now because you're, in theory, heterosexual. So the more masculine you look, the better you look. Women are really into men's faces. So the more masculine a guy is, the more attractive they find them. Therefore, a heterosexual woman might find herself more attractive as she gets virilized. But men are going to detect that and be totally turned off by it. Like the voice thing. The voice thing kills it for me. So you don't want a crackling voice. And girls don't think it's that bad. Believe me. It's a huge deal. Nobody is ever going to cancel out the voice. Ever. Yeah. You could be fat and have an A cup. And if you've got a sweet voice, it's going to be better than the girl with a perfect body and a teenage boy's voice. And girls are going to think I'm exaggerating, or they're going to be mad at me, and they're going to wish I was dead. I'm just trying to help you. Don't take more than 1 milligram of Anavar. And train hard. Like, I've seen a lot of girls that train like total shit. And then they take drugs to make up for it. It's like, if you're not taking as for a girl, because girls, on studies, they've proven girls don't take their sets to failure. That's why there's the perception girls have more endurance and can do more sets with shorter rest times. It's because they're like 8 to 10 reps in reserve at every set. If you take your set to failure, like you're shaking, like the nervous system is shaking because it can't contract anymore, that's when it's acceptable to rest for a minute and start the next set. Yeah. And if you train like that with proper volume, 1 milligram will be enough.
Yeah. There's so many things I agree with there. I think androgens are not really that necessary, first of all, because you have so many fucking peptides and ancillaries that you can use before getting onto any form of androgen. And unfortunately, it's just mostly for girls. The first thing is just Anavar, and it's 5 milligrams a day. And you can do like Kat, one of our coaches on our team, is a great example of this. She started at 2.5 milligrams of Anavar for her first like enhancement ever. It worked pretty well, but immediately, probably after about 4 to 5 weeks, she started noticing some hirsutism, like a little bit odd hair growth in terms of like on her arms and stuff. We cut it out. Like, it was just done. Then Adam and her decided that they would start using growth hormone. So at first they started using 2 IUs a day. It worked okay. She got pretty good results. She was still like a little bit, chunky, not necessarily looking like an athlete. Then she, started titrating up 3 IUs. Suddenly things started fucking happening. 4 IUs, things started happening. 6 IUs of growth hormone. And I shit you not, I'll show pictures because it's actually crazy. Like, the transformation she's made in a very short window of time is insane. So like, to start, like, she was basically, let's see, she has like a recent transformation photo, which is like a good example of where she was at before and after. Yeah, like basically, started the growth hormone, and
that's like huge difference.
Yeah, it just completely morphed. And this is a girl who was on, 2.5 milligrams of Anavar, didn't respond well. And so just using peptides, just using growth hormone has completely like revolutionized their look.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. So like,
I guess the IGF-1 does grow muscle.
Yeah. I guess so.
Sarcasm. This is a throwback to the other group.
Yeah.
The whole thing about IGF-1 doesn't grow muscle kills me. Yeah.
But so my point is, like, this girl asks, Anavar test, whatever. I honestly think it's like the best is kind of what I recommend for a lot of men too, which is low dose androgens, like extremely low dose microdosing, and then a higher dose of growth hormone, and subsequently like any other form. Like for me, for clients I've worked with, localized injections of IGF-1, amazing for females, especially in glutes, especially in shoulders, amazing. Things like that go so long, and it's just so unnoticed by females because here, babe, take 5 milligrams of fucking Anavar, and it's like, okay, there you go.
I recently started using IGF-1 DES, 25 micrograms, just 25 micrograms, bilateral in my biceps before I do biceps. I do biceps before back. So I made two changes. I moved biceps before back, and I started doing the injections in the biceps immediately after my warm-up before the biceps. And my peak is completely different on my left side. My right side, I haven't seen a big change, but my left side looks completely different. I went from my worst body part of my body to one of my best body parts in like 4 weeks.
Yeah, I will say your arms, like in the most recent photos you posted, you look better than you've ever looked. And your arms notably look a lot bigger, like a lot fuller than they've looked ever before.
Yeah. I put biceps before. So it goes biceps, then back, middle delts, triceps before chest. And then I alternate either biceps or triceps before legs. And so every workout starts pretty much with arms. If you count middle delts as arms, I kind of consider middle delts arms. And so every week, every 8 days, biceps are being hit with IGF-1 and trained first 3 times. Middle delts are being trained twice first with IGF-1, and triceps are being trained first with IGF-1. Now, keep in mind that I only do 4 sets of middle delts. So after 4 sets of middle delts, I go on to do 4 to 6 sets of triceps. I still have the IGF-1 working. So I'm really getting my triceps 3 times a week, my middle delts twice a week, and my biceps 3 times a week with the IGF-1 early in the workout before the heavier body parts like back, chest, and legs.
Yeah. It's working, dude. That's for sure. I'm just looking at your fucking pictures right now. It's working. Do you really put duct tape on your feet on the shoes?
Oh, that was just that year. It was because I really liked those shoes. Those were my leg training shoes, and they were falling apart. So I put duct tape on them. And you would not believe, like that's like a stereotypical thing women would hate. So many women would stop to because first of all, they're 2 different shoes, right? I was the first person I've ever seen 2 different shoes. And then 2, I've got duct tape on them. So it's another thing I found that works really well is if you go to the grocery store and you have your shoelaces untied, single moms will stop to tell you to tie your shoelaces because they're with their kids. They want to show them that they, like trying to correct you. So it makes it not so bad when they correct their kids. And then that's like a good end to have a conversation and stuff. So if you're ever desperate and you don't have a dog to walk in the park, just untie your shoes, and then chicks will stop you to tell you to tie your shoelaces.
There you go.
You're welcome.
Easy
all right.
facts.
Oh, Todd, in reference to your barbell training video, is it okay to spend a month or 2 increasing weight as much as possible on plate-loaded machines to see how heavy you can go? I don't see why you would want to do that. I think the power that kind of, if your goal is bodybuilding and you're trying to see whether or not you're trying to grow muscle, that's just you're basically burning up your runway. That the idea is as you grow muscle, the same weight gets so light, you are instinctively want to add weight to the bar. You're not trying to force progress with weights. That it's not the stronger you get, the bigger you get. It's the bigger you get, the stronger you get. So if you can benefit, if you can get hypertrophy from 180 pounds for 12 reps for several weeks before, instead of it being 1 RAR, it's 2 RAR, then go to 182 pounds for 12 weeks, for a couple weeks, then go to 185 pounds. You want to have the slowest progression possible so you're not burning up the joints and overstimulating yourself and getting fatigued. Remember that the most bang for your buck is stimulus to fatigue ratio is the 2 RAR point. That yes, you get more stimulus with the 1 RAR, but it's way more fatigue. So we want to be between 1 and 2 RAR on most of your first sets. So for instance, if I do 12 the first set, but I leave 2 in the tank, then I can get 12 the second set, and I might have 1 in the tank. Then I get 12 the third set, and I have 0 in the tank. That means I just got 36 reps with 180 pounds. Now, if I did 185 pounds and got 11 reps the first set and failed, I'm going to get like 7 reps the second set. I'm going to get like 4 reps the third set. So I only got 22 reps instead of 36 reps. When you do the math, that 5 extra pounds doesn't account for the fact that you're missing 14 reps. Not even close.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I agree with you. There's I don't even want to talk about training. I don't think it even fucking matters at the end of the day, which is also unpopular opinion. But I think if you're training and you're training hard and you enjoy it, it's working. It's working.
Well, if you grow muscle easily, some people don't grow muscle easily, and so they gotta really try to find the way to do it.
Sure.
Any thoughts on running S23? What's S23?
You've never heard of S23?
Is it one of those SARM things?
Yeah, it's one of those SARM things.
Yeah, dude, I don't fuck with that shit. I don't have a broccoli cut.
Yeah, so I don't think S23 is going to be doing anything.
Well, if you're already on steroids, why are you taking the bubblegum bullshit? Just take something that's real.
So he's also on 300 milligrams of 300 milligrams of test, 10 milligrams of, that's a fucking heavy dose of trizepatide, 5 milligrams of Cialis, and you're wondering if S23 would be beneficial. I don't think it would provide any assistance if you're already manipulating the androgen receptor through an exogenous androgen. It's just use more of that. I can't even remember like what's so particularly potent with S23. I mean, it's just manipulating the androgen receptor.
I mean, as far as the fat loss drugs, Tren or using a combination of Anavar and Clen are going to be how you can leverage fat burning with anabolics. I mean, and especially if you're using that much test, your estrogen might be through the roof. So Primo might be appropriate to use to control that estrogen.
Yeah. I actually don't see anything. I'm looking through my AI fucking research tool right now, Typeset.io, and I don't see a single study that's referencing S23 in terms of fat loss. So I would say, yeah, Todd's go to. I mean, just use a fucking beta-2 agonist like clenbuterol, albuterol. They work great if you're trying to cut. That's probably going to be more effective at conserving muscle tissue and maybe even building it, depending on how small you are, than probably S23 would be. All right, let's do 2 more, and then I got to bounce. Let's pull these up here. So, damn, we got a lot of questions. Up to GH to only 3 IUs, started getting dramatic pain in joints, back down to 2 IUs, which is fine. What are your thoughts?
Just if it hurts, don't do it.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that's pretty low to be experiencing some sort of
extremely low. But it is what it is, you know. Like at that point, just run with the 2. For all you know, you're getting 700 IGF-1 from 2, and you're getting like 900 from 3, and that's why you got the water retention. Everybody responds to this stuff differently. That's why you got to do the blood work, not arbitrarily. I had people like, do your blood work, do your blood work. It's like, what do you mean do my blood work? I don't know, just get it done. It's like, well, who reads it? I don't know. Does it matter? Yeah. The point is, do a focused investigation of your blood to see if what you're doing is working. So if you're using GH, you should see how much IGF-1 am I getting out of this GH. If you're increasing the GH and your IGF-1 isn't going up, you're pretty much using it as an expensive fat loss tool. You're better off keeping the GH. Don't do what I'm doing and use 20 units a day. If I was smart, I'd use 6 units a day and then use frag for the other 14 to burn. But for me, it'd be more expensive to use the frag than it would be to use the GH because of special circumstances. Otherwise, if it was one of those other people, if I had to use Serostim, motherfucker, I'd be using 6 units of Serostim. And then I'd be using other drugs to make up the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what about, would you split the dosing up into like patterns? So you do like, you know, if he wanted to get crazy, he could do like 2 IU in the morning, 1 IU pre-workout, 1 IU post-workout sort of situation.
Nah, I would just take all of it at night. When you got a dose that low, we can totally benefit from the better conversion of GH to IGF-1 at night. I think that caps out maybe at 4 units is when you start seeing an attenuation of that benefit. But if you're running less than 4 units, it should be all before bed.
I see.
Yeah,
I see.
I personally do 2 units in the morning, intramuscular, 2 units pre-lift, intramuscular, 16 units before bed, intramuscular. But I don't do them all in the same muscle. I move that shit around. So I'm getting about 4 units in each muscle.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Let's get one more here. The last one we got on a bulk. Thoughts on carb cycling, cardio supplement. Okay, this is just a huge, never mind. She wants us to build a program. Okay. When is it most optimal for your first cycle? Muscle growth, fat loss, rebound, and maintenance phase. When is most optimal? I assume he's meaning like when to start your first cycle. Is it in a muscle growth phase or a mass phase, a fat loss phase, a rebound from a fat loss phase, or a maintenance phase?
I definitely would say not a maintenance phase. Because if you're trying to maintain, you wouldn't use steroids. I don't see why somebody would use it on a cut phase unless they're getting ready for a show. Because your diets aren't going to be that deep or extreme that you're going to lose muscle. You're not going to lose muscle if you've got double-digit body fat.
Right.
At the beginning or the end. Like if you're trying to be like, I want to be ripped, and then their idea of ripped is 12% body fat because they're 26% body fat. And you think you're 14, but you're 26, and what the picture you think is 5% is actually 11, then yeah, you're good. Just you don't need any steroids for that. If you're trying to get sub 10% body fat, then you probably need steroids to hang on to some of your muscles if you have them, but you might not have any muscle under all that fat. But generally speaking, if you're sub 10% body fat, when girls look at you naked, they throw up in their mouth. Like you're not hot anymore. So it's not what you think. Like when you're like, I want to look like Thor, you know, like Thor's got like an 11 to 14% body fat. He's not ripped at all. He's jacked, but he ain't ripped. Like I want to look like Mike Tyson in his prime. I'm like, that's like 16% body fat.
Yeah.
I want to look like The Rock. The Rock's like 20% body fat. I think in Black Adam, he was down to like a 10, maybe.
Yeah, he was good looking there, but he wasn't.
Pain and Gain, the one time you saw his abs, there were no abs. Like Vin Diesel, there were no abs. Vin Diesel's never been 10% body fat. So
Vin Diesel's never been below 50.
Vin Diesel's not thin. All right. So the concept you have of what shredded is, you don't need steroids to get there. If these Hollywood actors can do it, then you can do it. This leaves one alternative is to get bigger. If you can't get bigger, if diet and training does not work anymore, you've gained so much muscle that no human on earth carries as much muscle as you naturally, and you can't push past your genetic limit, or you've been lifting for 15 years and you haven't gained a single pound of muscle, then using steroids to get bigger makes sense only if you're going to eat and train. You know, like, and you don't have to use a lot. You could use 30 milligrams of test a day, not 500 a week. 30 a day is 210 a week. Use 30 milligrams of test a week, or some combination of test and Masteron, and make sure you're in a calorie surplus, and at least you're training pretty close to failure, like 2 reps in reserve or less. And you know how many sets you do doesn't fucking matter if they all suck. So every set should be good. You should feel it where you're in the target muscle. So one set where you feel it in the target muscle and you go to failure is going to be more effective than 8 sets where you're looking around the room and not paying attention and you don't know where you feel it. That volume in the wrong location is not helpful. So like Dorian style training is good for beginners because you don't know where failure is until you hit it. And one set's probably all you need to grow. That's why Dorian's system's so popular, is because it will work for everyone. But high volume training is only going to work if you know how to train really well. When people back off on intensity and just turn up the volume, you get a lot of wasted energy and junk volume.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good clip for later. All you need is one set. Let me clip it. Todd says all you need is one set a week on each muscle group.
I don't know, I'm going to get in so much trouble because people are like, I thought you're a high volume guy. I thought you don't believe in failure. And it's like, I'm going to get torn to pieces because for bodybuilding, I don't believe in the one set thing. But if someone's starting their first cycle, then yes, Dorian's training is plenty of volume if you've never done steroids before.
For sure. Yeah. All right, man. Well, I think that's good. We pretty much finished up all the questions this time. We did pretty well. We can do this next week if you want. I don't know if you're up for it.
That sounds fun. Hopefully I don't get you demonetized. Was I politically correct enough?
All my fucking videos get demonetized anyways. Who cares?
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. All right, man.
If people don't hate you, you're doing it wrong. All right, man.
Yeah,
I'll talk to you.